Hello, this is the Somewhere on Earth podcast. My goodness, it's Tuesday, the 18th of June, 2024, and we have voices from London, from the two of us here in the studio, well, three of us seem to be when Ania comes in, and another voice, very nice voice, from Rome. And one of the voices from London today is our expert commentator, the excellent Qilin Boddington. I've not seen you for a while. Hello, Qilin.
Hello, Gareth. Lovely to see you two, to be in the studio together as well.
I know, it's still nice. Yeah, even this long after lockdown, it's still quite nice.
Yeah, it is. You're right.
Be in a real studio together. So just before we jump into the main part of the show, I always like to hear what you've been up to, what's going on, or indeed what you're about to do, because you've been packing your suitcase, haven't you, for yet another trip?
I have, and at the time we're recording this, I'm just flying out tomorrow to Austria to a special gathering of, they're called a bold community, and it's pioneers in policy making, business, research, creative industries from all over the world coming to Austria, and we're going to have a week together to do sharing of shaping the future. It's all about shaping the future and looking at technology and economies onwards. And so, yes, I'm going to be travelling through Austria with all these amazing people and meeting some of the Austrian innovators too, looking at climate neutrality, mobility, sustainability, and, of course, AI and the whole connections of AI to it. So,
I had a feeling that would come in. Well, that sounds like a lovely gig.
Yes, it is, actually. Very much looking forward to getting input, not just doing output all the time. Yeah.
There you go. Input and output going on in Vienna. Looking forward to hearing how that pans out. All right, as for today, let's jump in. And coming up, medical procedures have been disrupted for patients across some of London's main hospitals in recent days because of a ransomware attack. We ask who is behind that attack and how they caused all the trouble. Also today, the researchers who've used a virtual pair of tweezers to address profound questions about how bionic we all really are, or could be. That's all right here on the Somewhere on Earth podcast. So how can somebody or a group of people somewhere, how can they cause chaos and distress thousands of kilometres away? Well, London hospitals recently declared a critical incident when a ransomware attack hit a company that analyses blood tests for the UK's National Health Service. A Russian-speaking criminal gang called Qilin is thought to be behind the attack. Anya's been looking into it all, and most importantly, Ania, working out how to pronounce Qilin, Qilin, is it?
Qilin. Well, I think Qilin knows best. Qilin.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right. So there we are. So we know the name of this supposed criminal gang. So we've established all that. But now that we've done the pronunciation check, tell us a bit more about this hack then on these London hospitals.
So at the beginning of June, hospitals in London that use systems of a company called Synovis found themselves the victims of a ransomware hack. Now, Synovis partners with the National Health Service here in the UK and provides what are known as pathology services, so examining tissue, bodily fluids, post-mortems. But the big thing that was affected here was blood tests. King's College Hospital and Guy's and St Thomas's, which are quite famous hospitals, they have quite a few high-profile hospitals within them, were majorly impacted. For blood transfusions, test results, total of 7 were actually impacted.
So do we have any idea what actually happened then?
So this meant that patients were sent to other hospitals or had operations and treatments cancelled. So even blood tests at local doctors' clinics had to be cancelled.
What if a company says, no, I'm not paying?
Well, it's understood that it was a ransomware attack. Hackers inserted a piece of software into Synovis's IT system, which locks up a computer system to extort a payment for restoring those services. The group believed to be behind the attack, as we've already discussed, is called Qilin. It's a Russian-speaking criminal gang, but we don't actually know where they are based. It's been active since October 22. Initial attacks were on the French company Robert Bernard and the Australian IT consultancy Dialogue. So far, we know 112 attacks have been attributed to them. but their activity seems to have increased very much in the last 4 months or so. It operates in a somewhat franchise basis. So if you can imagine a chain of fast food restaurants, I guess it's something similar to this. So independent hackers can use its tools and infrastructure in exchange for a 15 to 20% cut of any proceeds that Qilin would receive. The attacks tend to be opportunistic rather than being targeted. So the best defense is to have excellent defense systems in place in the first place. Now, there is a security group. Do have a look at their website. It is fascinating. You'll lose hours in it. It's called Group IB. They infiltrated Qilin last year. They say that typical ransom demands are between $50,000 and $800,000 US. Typical attacks start with phishing emails with malicious links. So these are targeted messages to employees, and they try and convince them to click on them. And then what happens? It allows the hackers in, and they install malware. Group IB says that Qilin's targets are primarily critical sector companies, education and healthcare, as we've seen in London, and they recruit hackers through adverts on underground forums. The information that the hackers have access to, Qilin says they will be published on the dark web. Now, how real is that threat is the actual question. Well, the big issue, so that's the magazine publication, which is sold by homeless people in many countries, including the UK, Australia, South Africa, Namibia, Kenya, Malawi. They didn't pay the demanded ransom, and more than 500 gigabytes of information was taken from the publisher, was posted on the dark web. This included passport scans of employees and payroll information. So obviously it is, it's affected many countries and is quite a big operation and seems to be getting bigger.
Yeah, so Glenn Boddington, Ania says it's a problem that's worsening. Is that your reading of it as well?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think we've seen a massive increase in this type of attack since pandemic. There's hundreds of thousands of attacks a day across the world. And of course, many companies are not stating that it's happened to them. And so we probably don't even know, half or even 2/3 of what is happening out there. And the ransomware side is really scary. But there's a thing called RAS, RAAS, which is ransomware as a service. And it's ransomware which offers multiple encryption modes that can be controlled by those hackers. And what it does is it's got this double extortionist tactic where it both encrypts the data and then threatens to publish it if a ransom is not paid. So even if they didn't publish it, potentially would be encrypted and not accessible anyway. So if a ransom is not paid, which the health system doesn't pay, do they, the ransoms, if I understand? No. And it is mainly through phishing emails. So I was looking at what the cybersecurity lot are planning ahead, because at the present they're struggling, really struggling. And but there's one of the things that's out there now. Most companies are looking at is called zero trust architecture, and I've been hearing about this all over the place. And it basically means zero trust for internal and external entities. And apparently this is a paradigm shift, but it basically means you can't trust anyone, not any of your employees, none of your staff, and obviously not the external stuff coming in. And I can feel it even in my university. We're much, much more tougher about this. It is up to us as well, because it only takes one staff member and you could be, doing the wrong click. And it's so scary that, because of course they wouldn't mean to.
So somebody literally just opens up a PDF and they can end up taking out potentially their whole organisation or a big chunk of it.
And £1 million ransomware comes into place, Obviously, AI and machine learning are coming into all of this because, of course, pattern recognition and data analysis is part of the whole. But in cybersecurity, still, that human insight alongside it is an imperative, because there's a lot of nuances and creativity, that the hackers put on. They're very creative with how they're working on this. And it is alarming because AI also can generate huge amounts of malware variants. So AI in itself could be part of the problem, making more happen, What we just need is all these hackers to become cybersecurity experts instead, because, of course, it's two sides of the same coin. It's just whether you are going to work for the good side or the bad side, or how you see it, and whether the jobs are there for you.
That's the thing. And presumably they'll follow the money. I mean,
They'll
if the good side
money.
is saying, we'll pay you more than the criminal gangs, then if I were a hacker, which I am not, by the way, it's nothing to do with me, this whole thing. But if I was, I'd say, fair enough. The dosh is nicer on the bright side.
But quite often, of course, these young people, often young men, very, very high level with their coding, are in countries where there isn't the right kind of cybersecurity job for them and the proper pay. They haven't got another option. Romania is one of those places, yeah. So,
and they can be living in countries that, for geopolitical reasons, want to cause problems in other countries.
yes, yeah.
Right, I'll park it there, I think. Good end. Thank you. And you, Anya, isn't it lovely to see you this side of the glass? The
Yes.
listeners do like it, you know.
Oh, that was Patricia. So we know one does.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, we like balance on this podcast. So if you don't like it when Anya comes this side of the glass, then do let us know and we can have a good old discussion
Do like
about
it,
that.
let us know.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't, we'll just ignore it. Oh, everyone loves it. Okay, there we are. And wouldn't you just believe it? We have some guests arriving for the podcast we're recording next. So we're going to do that in a minute. You're going to hear it next week, folks, but it's going to be a good one.
Excellent.
And the guests are here. We've got a podcast for next week. Awesome. Right,
We
there you
better
go.
finish this one then.
I think we better have.
Yeah.
So let's move on. Here we go. Well, here's a profound question about our relationship with technology. What if, instead of having hands, we had some kind of bionic device at the end of our arms? Could we adapt to it as naturally as if we'd never had hands in the first place? Well, some researchers in Italy have been addressing that very question using virtual reality. They've devised a set of virtual tweezer hands, if you see what I mean. And they've invited some volunteers to try it all out. And they've been inviting them to try out some dextrous tasks to see how they get on with these virtual tweezer hands. Let's hear more now from Professor Viviana Betti. She leads Cosync, which is a lab specialising in neuroscience research. She's also with the Department of Psychology at the Sapienza University of Rome in Italy. Welcome along to Somewhere on Earth, Viviana.
Hi, nice to see you.
So, give me the background to all this. Why did you want to look into this kind of research, effectively about our bionic selves?
Okay, so that's a good question. So we already know from neuroscientific study that the brain maintains an internal model of the body, particularly of the hand. So what we meant by internal model is a stable representation, and this stable representation persists even after an amputation. So this is the first set of evidence. So another set of evidence suggests that nearly half of people with upper limb prosthetics abandon them. They are often uncomfortable, dysfunctional, or just don't feel like a part of their body. And this study, we made an unusual choice to circumvent this issue. So for this reason, we invented this new paradigm.
Okay, yeah. So I think I get all that. So the idea that even after an amputation, someone still imagines their hands to be there, then they get a prosthetic that in some cases perhaps doesn't feel natural to them. So you're using virtual reality then to try and investigate, to get round this issue of, you know, how we deal with some kind of enhancement or bionic adornment to my body. And I don't know if you like the word bionic, by the way, so I'll let you tell me if I can use that kind of language. But tell me how virtual reality came into this.
Yes, so the idea is to ask participants. So initially we design a very simple task. So the idea is to test their ability and dexterity using both a virtual bionic tool or a virtual hand. So what we ask is if to pop bubbles of a specific color, for example, by pinching them with their tweezers or between the index finger and the thumb. And what we found in using this paradigm is that participants were faster and more accurate at popping virtual bubbles when they had tweezers.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You love listening to podcasts, but have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? Maybe you want to build a brand, grow your business, or are looking for an excuse to talk about your favorite hobby. Whatever your reason for making a podcast, Buzzsprout is the place to start. Since 2009, Buzzsprout has helped over 300,000 people launch their own podcasts. Buzzsprout walks you step by step through the whole process and will give you powerful tools to start, grow, and monetize your podcast. Ready to get started? Click the link in the show notes to get our free step-by-step guide to starting your podcast today.
Which to me seems counterintuitive. So I'm just trying to imagine myself as one of your volunteers. I'm in
Sure.
the virtual environment. So I hold my arm up in front of me, and then I see a virtual hand in front of me, and I do one set of tests, and then I get these tweezers. So effectively, you've taken my hand away and just given me effectively like a pincer. I'm more like a lobster now than having the hand that I imagined. And counterintuitively, for me anyway, you were saying that people responded better with the virtual pincers, with the tweezers.
Yes, sure, that's correct. The idea, so our interpretation, is that the control of that virtual limb is even simple than a virtual hand, because the virtual hand is an external object and it is difficult to control. So the hand has more than 20 degrees of freedoms. So the idea is that the virtual tool, even if doesn't have the same aesthetic features of the hand, then is easy to use and to control for the brain.
Qilin, you're my go-to person, apart from Viviana, of course.
Yes.
On anything to do with our embodied or indeed non-embodied selves. What do you make of this?
I'm really interested, Viviana, in the choice to use VR for an embodiment test. I'm coming from a living body background, dance and technology side, and I always consider that actually the concept of embodiment, and this is part of my work, is very different in the virtual world, as we kind of know from lockdown in video conferencing, and the big debate also in VR experiences about the problem of creating, virtual presence and liveness and a feeling of reality, So I was wondering about the choice to use the virtual where there's no weight or effort or sense of force or exertion, or no tactile, touchy-feeling side of it.
Yes, so for sure, virtual reality is not physical reality, but is a fantastic way to create extreme manipulation of the body. And using this paradigm in virtual reality, where we also able to have a sense of agency and a sense of control of the virtual hand or the virtual limb in general. So, the idea is that virtual reality, if you embody that tool, you have the idea that this belongs to your body. And using the sense of agency, you have the idea that you can control the virtual limb. So for us, of course, this is the first study. We are doing also studies using amputees and motor training lasting 4 weeks. But so this is the first study, but is really effective in inducing the sense of belonging of that body, both the virtual hand or the virtual tool. Of course, it's not the reality, but it's a good way to test this manipulation.
Well, yeah, because I was wondering why not do these tests in an embodied context, as I think Qilin suggests. And I wonder if part of it is, the clues in the title of some of what your research is about, like neuroscience that I mentioned in the introduction. Because in your work, in your paper, you say that you're interested in brain plasticity, aren't you? In other words, how the brain rewires itself, for want of a better phrase, in terms of using our tools, for instance, and our motor function. So is that really part of it, that you want to go right into the neuroscience level to try and understand this?
Yes, so our expectation is that we can observe brain plasticity effect after tool usage. So there exists already scientific evidence showing that the tool use can rewire the brain or induce some plasticity effect. This is a novel paradigm in which we have the virtual grafting of the tool or the virtual hand. So this study is still ongoing. So we still don't have precise indication, but so of course these are our expectations. So the brain can rewire using this different way to interact with the environment.
Yeah, no, that's some of the work that I've been hearing about, and I know at University of Cambridge in the plasticity lab there. Danny Claude is one of the designers working there. She's an augmented designer, and she's got a project called the Third Thumb Project. Mm-hmm. So it's not quite the same. It's not, it's not a complete hand. It's an additional thumb. she's testing out on people who actually have got thumbs. They've got 2 thumbs, which is why it's called the third thumb. And she actually does brain scans before, and then they go away with this third thumb and use it for a few weeks, and then they do brain scans after. And what they've been looking at, and I guess this is possibly the same word, is proprioception. This actually the body's ability to sense movement, action and location, but which is a body-mind interface, yeah? Is this part of the work you're looking at, this body-mind connection, and how proprioception is the key to actually, because it's linked to every muscle movement we make, every action and location. And of course, when you're moving part of your body, whether it's part of your body or not, whether it's a virtual limb or whether it's an add-on prosthesis, that's what starts to happen, isn't it, in the brain?
Yeah, so there are a very nice example in the literature, the third thumb or the 6th finger. So these are example of augmented robotics, and so we believe that this proprioceptive input, or in general the movement that you can do in the virtual environment, can induce sort of plasticity effect in the brain. So I can repeat, so this is still an ongoing study for us. So what we did is to test amputees and control subjects using fMRI before and after a long motor training lasting 4 weeks. So we already collected the data. We don't have solid results at the moment. The study is still ongoing, but for sure. So what we believe is the naturalistic interaction with the external environment, even if now is a virtual environment, can induce reshaping of the brain. So we developed 9 virtual scenarios in which participants can interact with everyday life objects, doing, for example, Lego construction, or interacting with some tools and other objects in the environment. So we still so we believe that this is an effective way to induce a modulation of brain activity and connectivity. So we really believe that this could be effective and can also provide important insight for the neurorehabilitation, because if it's possible to induce some modulation of the brain activity, especially that activity devoted to the representation of the brain, then we can do a step further into the development of new prosthetic device.
Okay. Well, there we'll leave
Really
it with you, Viviana. Yeah. Any final thought from you, Qilin? Or
you were just saying it's really interesting in terms of the uses of it for actually the brain side of it only, actually developing the, people who've maybe had neurological damage of some type, etc. So, fascinating work.
Yeah, absolutely. Viviana, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us here on Somewhere on Earth. That's Professor Viviana Betti, who leads Cosync, so it's that lab specialising in neuroscience research in Rome, where she's also with the Department of Psychology at the Sapienza University. And there'll be more in the podcast extra, in the subscription version of this. But if you're a non-subscriber, no worries, you'll have really got the gist of it from that brilliant interview. So we thank you. So just a quick little shout out before we go. Of course, we like you to get in touch. hello@somewhereonearth.co. That's hello@somewhereonearth.co. That's our email. And on WhatsApp, we're code 447486 329 484. And come to think of it, I don't think we've had a voice message from you out there in listener land for a while. So why not leave us a little voice message? Tell us what you think of what you just heard, for instance. That would be rather lovely. Okay, we'll leave it for there. So from all of us on the team, and the team, by the way, is Dylan Burton on sound, Ghislaine Boddington on expertise, me, Gareth Mitchell, on just rabbiting on a little bit, production management from Liz Toohey, and the team here are at Lanson's Team Farner. From all of us, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you soon. And our editor is Ania Lichtarowicz. Bye-bye.